This is Akira. Akira is a little bit of a nervous dog. Yeah, she's a very nervous dog. I'm not going to split any hairs. Now, we have a gentleman over here who's a guest who she is not a fan of. And she's not a fan of a lot of, mostly men. Seems to be more of proclivity for African Americans, but there are some white people that she doesn't like as well. Now, sometimes we have, when it comes to dogs, everything is a smell. And I have actually seen situations where a dog actually, people who are not Caucasian, typically have their skin getting a little bit drier. And so you use a lot of lotions. And so a lot of these lotions have the same core components. And what I found is a lot of times the dog smells that same lotion that one person is wearing, that something bad happened, and starts associating. And so sometimes it's not so much like other people, like, my dog is racist. Like, your dog is not racist, probably just wasn't socialized. Now, this is a good sign. A dog won't sit or lie down around something that they're not comfortable around. So I've been at the session for about an hour here, and I've been practicing while I've been talking about all sorts of positive dog training tips. I've been basically doing this sort of thing. And we have our guest sitting right over here who she's not a fan of. Now, she's not running away from him, and before she would take the treat and move away. So what I've been doing, and I'm allowing her to do it, and when I'm tossing these treats on the ground, I'm not enticing her whatsoever. I'm throwing them. Dogs' eyes are not very good for detail or for color, but they're great for movement. That's why if you see a bunny rabbit sitting on the side of the road, just stand there. You're like, that rabbit's got guts. No, it just knows if I don't move, the dog can't see me. So as you can see, the ears are back. I'm going to talk a little bit about body language. A lot of times they look very stiff. Sometimes they're like hunched over. I'll give it a sit. That's a good sit right there. The ears typically are back. The head is often low. They're licking their lips frequently. Their pupils are typically dilated. A lot of times they'll turn their head to the side and yawn a lot. That's called a calming signal. Dogs will do that to say, I'm stressed out, or you need to calm down. Also, sometimes the hackles. The guardian mentioned that sometimes her tail will fluff up. Usually the hackles run on the spine of the dog. It's most prominent right between the, thank you, sweetheart, between the shoulder blades and between the hips. And it's an involuntary reflex. They're trying to make themselves look bigger. Yawning, well, I think I said yawning already, could be a calming signal. And then breathing heavy or holding their breath, freezing in place. All of these things are warning signs or signals. Most of us miss these things. And if our dog does it, or they stare like this or stare like this. I'm staring at the camera, I'm just not doing it a direct way, which is how a lot of dogs do that. Now, if your dog does those, he's saying, I'm uncomfortable with this guest or whoever the person is. And a lot of times the guests try to pet the dog. And I think that in her case, I think the guardian has inadvertently reinforced some of these because she does what a lot of people do. They want our dog to feel comfortable. You're in distress, let me pet you. And let me make you feel better. You see the ears are really far back right now. If you're watching this playback, you'll notice her ears went even further back when I started touching her. Now, for dogs, anything they're doing when we pet them is what we're reinforcing and amplifying, and this includes unbalanced states of mind. So if you have a fearful dog, even though you mean well, every time you pet your dog, you're going to make it worse. Now, I can let the dog know I'm here with you by just touching. Now, you saw her, when you watch the playback, you'll see her ears went back again. They were kind of relaxed before I reached out to touch her. And ears going back is a sign of either stress, anxiety, or I'm putting them back like I'm going to fight. I think in hers, it's just more stress or nervousness, timidness. And so basically what I want her to do is I want her to practice moving towards our guest in the easiest capacity possible. I'm using the best treats she's probably ever had. The guardians found this works, and she uses lunch meat, which is great, but these are chicken liver, which have a really strong aroma. Now you notice here, I'm not offering a second treat, but she's lingering. Now she's looking at the guest, the ears went back, and she took that little step backwards. So I'm going to try to ask for a little bit more. Now before, I should have probably shot this before when she was doing that, her legs were out behind her. She was leaning towards him. And that's a classic sign of insecurity. I'm so uncomfortable, I want to be ready to, it's almost like a baseball player kind of keeping his foot on the bag while he's trying to lean this direction. So basically what I'm doing is helping her practice getting closer and closer to the guest. Right there you saw a little bit of her feet behind her. Her tail was also a little bit tucked. Now, tail is also, we'll talk a little bit about tail body language. A lot of people confuse the tail's wagging. So that was a yawn towards the guest, but she didn't move away, and her ears are kind of coming forward, and you see her using her nose. These are all great signs. If she were to sit or lie down, even better sign. I'm going to have you come back to me for this. And just keep her in the foreground, but let's keep the camera up towards me. All right, and so now she's kind of wandering around. She's sniffing, and that's good. So basically, for the tail, if this is the dog where the dog's head, and this is the dog's spine, and let's say this arm represents the tail, being up is kind of more commanding, assertive. It could be dominant, it could be aggressive, it could be a warning. Parallel with the spine is kind of what we like to see. Now, some dogs have a little bit of a curl tail. It'll go down and then curl up a little bit at the end. That's okay. But we'd like to see it going parallel, continuing the same direction as the spine. If it's going between the legs, especially like phallically, that's very insecure. We definitely shouldn't be petting the dog when that's the case. And but the tail wagging does not mean happy. It means excited. It's really more where it's wagging. So we'd like to see a tail kind of in the middle. Now, basically what we're, some tips. Now, the guardians kind of figure this out, and our guests has also figured this out. So when the guests come over, they ignore her. Now, she usually flights and tries to move. If she's outside, she won't come inside. So what we want to do, and we block the office, which is kind of where she goes away to. So we want to take away her ability to do flight away. We want to give her room to move away, however. Otherwise, she will still feel entrapped. So we want her to feel empowered. I can move away if I want to. Now, what I'm doing, basically, what I did throughout the session is I just toss these treats. At first, they were way over here. Then they got a little bit closer. Sometimes I'll do like what I call a treat trail, where I'll do a treat 1, 1, 2. Oh, very good. You can film that. That's really close. And you saw she took it, and then she moved away, and again, moved away at her own power. Oh, that's a little bit too far. That one went under the couch. So let's see if we can make one a little bit more accommodatable. What we want her to do is we want her to practice approaching and then practice moving away at her own power with nothing happened. Now, I mentioned some of these things to the guest off camera, but when we have a guest that's doing this, and I would invite you to have your guest watch these videos, as the guest can't move, even if he just coughs, especially if the dog's creeping up really, she's trying to work up her courage. And if he just like sniffles, that can backfire. So what I want her to do is practice. I can approach him, and now I'm able to get it closer and closer. This is before. Now we saw the classic lean in that particular throw. But she's still lingering here. Now, even though the treats are coming from me, I'm not delivering them here. I'm delivering them there. So now if we gave the guest these treats, it's, oh, stranger danger. What are you trying to trick me into? So we want to have a trusted source be the one manipulating, so we don't put any scent of the guest on here. We're going to talk about some scent things that we can do here in a second. Now she's looking at the guest, and the guest would be best to not look at her, don't talk to her, certainly don't try to reach out for her. And these are the 3 things that everybody tries to do to show you I'm a good person. But for the dog, the more we leave them alone, the more comfortable they get just practiced at it. Now that was another bad toss. It kind of went right underneath the feet. So we'll get one a little bit closer. We'll see if she'll take the second one while she's there. Sometimes they'll think about it, and we'll see if we can achieve that one with this next one. I'm going to do 4 treats this time, and I'm going to place them because evidently I cannot toss today. So what I'm going to do is just get her closer. We go. And this is what we call a jackpot when we put a big reward at the end. And again, we don't want to entice the dog under any way, shape, or form. We can observe, but as soon as we start trying to tell them, and you can keep on filming her, that's fine. I would just kind of keep your eyes towards me. And otherwise, she's like, oh, she's looking, and they're waiting for us to try to encourage them to do it. We're not doing that. We're waiting for her to do it on her own. So we see we get a lean, but now there's 3 of them there. So she's weighing her options. Should I get it or not? And she checked to look. Is he looking at me or not? And he was doing a good job. He was just keeping his gaze the same. So now the more that we do this, we'll find that we're able to get her closer and closer, but we have to let her go at her pace, not at our pace. And then in our society, we move so fast now, we want everything immediately. Watch The Dog Whisperer. Maybe we'll watch a different version of The Dog Whisperer with yours truly soon. But we watch The Dog Whisperer and we see it looks good for TV, and hey, he'd be able to fix it in 10 minutes. Well, that's the magic of editing. In the real world, trust for humans takes a while to develop. It's going to take the dog trust and time before the dog feels more and more confident approaching humans. But every time that she approaches a human, she gets these high-value treats. Nothing bad happens, and in her mind, the human even looking or moving is something bad. But eventually, she's going to come closer and closer, and see she's moving really slow, which is saying, I'm uncomfortable about this. Now I got 2, now I got 3. I can't get the one that's under his foot, but I'm thinking about it. I know it's there. I can smell it. I'm trying to work up the courage. And the guest is doing a great job by not moving on. Even if she just twitches his foot just ever so slightly, that'll be too much for her. So I was hoping that we'd get her there with that one. We didn't. Now, if the guest does want to move, we would make a cough or a benign sound first to alert the dog, and then the person would move around. Now, in this case, she warmed up to me right away. And we're going to kind of make it a little bit more of a jackpot there. And so I can move around, and she's comfortable with it. But I also, again, ignored her, and she was in the other room. There was a couple other things that were going on. Okay, so we're gonna keep on filming her if she goes, it tries to go over that, and I'll just keep on talking about these other little tips and steps. But I don't mind if you're filming her for it. And again, she's looking at me, waiting for me to prompt her and cue her, and I'm not giving her any direction at all. I want the dog to figure things out on their own. I find a lot of people micromanage their dog to such an extent the dog doesn't know what to do. And especially if you have an insecure dog, you see the tail tucking a little bit. The more that we do stuff for her, we think we're doing them a solid, but it's really handicapping the dog. So we need the dog to figure these things out on their own because that's where they'll gain confidence. All right, so now I'm going to talk about some other tips that we can use when we have guests coming over, especially if the guest comes over frequently. Scent is how dogs meet the world. So one of the things we could do is get a little hand towel, like a washcloth, and give it to our guest and ask our guest if they work out, hey, after you work out, can you take this and just wipe off your little sweat? I did this when I was mowing the lawn when I've done it for dogs. And then basically, once you get done, put it in a Ziploc bag, zip up the bag with no air in it, broke the air out, and then bring it to me. What I would do is then I would lay down the washcloth or the towel on the floor, and I would drop a treat on it, kind of like this. Now, this is tough because there's another person right here. Hello? Ooh, we got a sniff of the shoe. That's awesome. So that's one of those coincidental things. That wasn't what I was going for, but that's an awesome thing to have happen. She smelled him a little bit and nothing bad happened. I feel good about that. Now, again, tossing them will be a little bit more attractive for her. Anyways, going back to the towel. So let's say that this represents the towel. What I do is when the dog is feeling comfortable and confident because the guest is not here, I open up that towel and I drop it on the floor and flat, and then I drop a treat on it. And the dog is comfortable with going over there because there's no people here. I come over and lick up the treat, but I'm also getting a whiff of that person's smell. But I'm doing it in an easy capacity. This is something I mentioned to the Guardian. A lot of what I like to try to do is try to kind of peel the layers back and help the dog practice one thing at a time without all the other things that are associated with it that are overwhelming for the dog. So in this case, the dog's starting to smell the person while they're getting these high-value training treats, and then they get a walk away, and the person's not even around. So I feel very comfortable and very confident about that. And I would do that maybe with about 3 or 4 treats about 5 different times a day. So ideally, we'd like to do this, and what you'll find is after a while, that towel comes down, and the dog's like happy going over there. Now, we'd like the next step to be to put the towel down after about 4 or 5 days. The towel goes down, the dog goes over and sniffs the towel. After they sniff the towel, then I deliver the treat. Now, first, we're using the treat to lure the dog there, but now we're doing what we call a conditioned emotional response. We want the dog to initiate some contact, and when it does that, then something good happens. I'll give you another one to get you moving a little forward. Now, after the dog starts going towards it and touching it, then you can actually start picking up the towel and holding it out for the dog. The dog comes over and touches it with the nose. You take the towel away and drop the treat. And then do that again. Sometimes I switch and bring the towel up this way and that way. But again, we're helping the dog just meet the person by scent only. Now, the other thing we can do, especially if we're going to have somebody who's going to stay with us, is grab some of our dog food. Give a little handful to the person and have them take it and rub it between their hands and then into the Ziploc bag. So we're going to put the guest scent onto the food for the dog. Now, again, when this is delivered, the guest is not around. But now I like eating, and every time I'm eating, I'm tasting a little bit of this human that's not present. When the human actually comes, now the dog is familiar with the human because they got to meet him, and they got to meet him without the pressure of a real human there. They got to meet him by scent, which is how dogs should meet, and it helps create a positive association because of the treats and the treats and the snacks. I actually did this with my puppy. When I went to get him, I had shipped off a towel, and the breeder had done this. By the time I walked up the whelping box, he knew who I was before I'd even met him because he was introduced to me by scent. All right. So now the last little trick that we're going to go over about helping a dog feel comfortable with the human is something we're not going to show on the camera. I'm just going to describe. We're going to do this after we film this video. For dogs, they get over things by literally moving forward. And one of the things dogs really enjoy doing is walking. And so when I have a situation like this, and I've had a lot of situations where the dog will resource guard the wife from the husband, all sorts of crazy situations like that. Basically what I do is I recommend that the person the dog is fearful of take the dog out for a walk. Now, most people are like, he's fearful of it. Well, dogs get over things by moving forward, and they enjoy walking. And so now the person should not be putting the dog on a leash or attaching the harness or the collar or any of those things. The human should do it. And the first walk I would usually recommend is having the human and the guest walk together with the dog. Just maybe around the block. Now what I usually do is human, dog, human. So I have the dog in between. And if the dog keeps on squirting around, have the human a couple feet away and walk. And eventually you're going to kind of walk closer and closer. You're going to get closer until, again, you're both on the sidewalk. And then eventually, and the dog's going to walk looking at the human, looking at the human. And after a while, they kind of stop looking up as much. What I do is I just very gently hand the leash to the guest. Now the guest is holding the leash, but the dog doesn't realize this at first. After a while, they start doing it, and then when we get back to the home or wherever, we drop off the dog's actual guardian, and then the guest takes the dog for about a 15 minutes or longer walk. And the more that this happens, the dog starts to associate. When the guest comes over, I go for a walk. I like going for a walk. And again, while we're doing this, the guest is not trying to talk to the dog, not trying to pet the dog or do anything, but it is leading the dog. We're going to put a big trail roadmap to, well, we're going to get, so again, that movement, she's like, well, maybe I'm going to go get treats from you. I feel more comfortable getting from you. I don't want to get next to this guy's shoes. I've done this where I actually place them on the person's foot. But again, it takes time. And each time that she approaches, gets a treat, and walks away, or like that time, she approached, didn't get the treat, but nothing bad happened and walked away, and nobody's enticing her, so she's coming back over here. She also just did a little bit of a lick of her side. That's also a really good sign of a dog feeling comfortable. If we're scared out of our minds, we don't care how our hair is parted, and we don't care about our breath and the rest of those things. We're terrified. And so anytime a dog starts grooming itself or doing anything that is more, quote unquote, a normal activity, that means that they're relaxed enough to feel comfortable enough to do that. So what I'd like the guardians to do is start, the exercise is good for the dogs. These dogs she gets plenty of exercise. We should probably get a little bit more, like probably any dog out there. But you see, she's using her nose. She's sniffing. But the main thing is we've asked her to walk towards the guest on her own volition. I'm asking her to walk towards me at the own volition. We're not enticing her or forcing her or pressuring her to do it. She gets to do it at her rate, at her speed. She knows there's treats over there. Yes. I can't give you any more. You know where they are? We'd like to get you to lick those up before we end this video. If we don't, that's fine. If your dog won't approach the person, at first, I set this up by doing this for about an hour and a half. So at first, if she won't cross this line of the carpet, then just keep on practicing up to this line and no further. And then next time the guest comes over, maybe try to practice before this line a little bit and then move one or two over there. The idea is to gradually move it so slowly the dog doesn't even recognize I'm getting closer and closer. And eventually, like, oh, I'm here. Oh, I sniffed him. Nothing bad happened. But again, we set her up for success by doing the hand towel thing. So we create a positive association with the food thing. We create a positive association. Now the last thing we could do is something we didn't do for this one, and I was debating whether I was going to say this or not, but since it's a longer video, I'll just go through it anyways. Something I practice, and this is about as close to force as I get, is something called flooding, which is kind of trying to expose the dog to something that is it's fearful of. We have to make sure the dog, really good sign, laying down. Now she's laying down facing the guest, which tells me she's still not completely comfortable. You see the ears are kind of coming a little bit forward, but laying down is sitting as a way of saying I'm challenging you less, or I consider myself, or I trust you enough to put myself at a little bit of a disadvantage. Laying down is I pretty much trust you enough that you're not going to snatch me, so I can get myself into a relaxed position. Now, one of the things the guardian mentioned to me when first she's doing a little bit of grooming. Again, great signs. This is even better when she's sitting. Before she was on her haunches, so that's kind of like sprinter track mode. Now she's what I call side saddle. So she'd have to right herself and then stand up. So that's one more extra move that shows another indication of being more relaxed. And again, more grooming. And so if you could see her put her chin on the ground, she's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to quite go that far. But those are the signs of what we're looking for, is her feeling more and more relaxed and more comfortable and more confident. Now, the last little thing I do, I'm going to talk a little bit about flooding. Now, you don't want to do this until the dog is very... you know what? I'm not even going to talk about flooding. Flooding is basically where we kind of force the dog to be next to somebody where the person doesn't interact with them. But she's already progressed pretty well with this. So I would rather just stick with exclusively the positive reinforcement. So you see that she's kind of sniffing around the ground looking for treats. These are... We almost have a chin down. And we still have a plethora of treats around the friend's foot. She didn't get all of those, That's okay. Rome wasn't built today. So basically, I like the guardian. There we go. We got the chin on the ground, turned her head to the side away from the guardian. This is something you should celebrate. Now, a lot of us want to make an excited noise and go over there and pet the dog and let him know. Celebrate yourself and just be like, I helped my dog accomplish something that was pretty awesome. And a lot of people are like, but I want him in the person's lap. We'll get there, but it's going to take time to build up that trust. Now, for each person, you're going to probably move a little bit faster, a little bit slower. And the more that you do this, the more trust she's going to have in her guardian, as well as in the guest, because the guest comes over and they just ignore me completely. But hey, when guests come, treats fall from the sky. We're making it rain dog treats, and she's loving it. So these are some if I can speak properly, these are some tips and tricks that you can use to help a dog feel more comfortable and feel like they can approach the people on their own.